Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 1 of Batman Before. So yeah, what is this series of video about, you may be asking yourself. Well, basically we've got a new Batman film coming out in the cinema in about 20 days time. So why not jump on the bandwagon and do some Batman content. Yeah, so I'm going to do a series of videos focusing on Batman. I'll look at each of the films, give you my thoughts, a review, I'll do a film ranking, I'll look at other areas of Batman as well. I might look at my collection of Batman Blu-rays, DVDs, well, Blu-rays 4K, sorry. I may well do a close-up of some of the statues that I have for Batman. I may look at some of the Batman comics. There may be stuff that you'll be interested in, there may be stuff that you're not, but in this video I'm going to talk about Batman 1989, the Tim Burton classic film. I'm going to talk about my history with the film. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the film. Now, in 1989, when this film came out, it was a big year for cinema. There was a lot of sequels this year, a lot of big films. You had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you had Back to the Future Part 2, was it? Ghostbusters, Star Trek 5, Lethal Weapon 2. The list goes on. There was a lot of releases that particular year. Batman ended up cleaning up at the box office, and the rest is history for it. Now, as I said before, this film is directed by Tim Burton. This film stars Michael Keaton as Batman, Bruce Wayne, Jack Nicholson as the Joker, Kim Basinger, as well as a wealth of other actors. Now, my experience with this film, I was maybe 13 at the time when this came out in the cinema, and I didn't get to see it theatrically. My first viewing of this, and I recall, was on a dodgy VHS tape. Yes, we had a guy who lived near us who worked in the local video store, and he got all the pirates, and he gave us, and the film's dark enough as it is. You know the film, you've seen the film, it's very dark. So imagine watching it on a crappy cam. It wasn't very good at all. Now, this film, I've had a sort of varied history with this film, a very up and down varied history with this film, and by the end of this video you'll get to see where I'm at with the film and how I judge it. So obviously I didn't go into it initially seeing it particularly well. It wasn't fantastic. Then I obviously rented it, and I remember I went up to London one day with my dad. I was only young. And I went into the big HMV that they had up there at the time. And on the way walking through London, I found a £10 note on the floor. Happy days for a kid, especially back then. And they were selling, for about 30 quid in HMV, they were selling the rental copy, you know, in the old big VHS boxes, if you remember them, which were larger than your standard retail VHS boxes. They were selling one of them for like 30 quid. Well, I had a few of them. So with the extra £10 I found, I had the money for it. So I bought it, this VHS copy. And I did like ex-rental tapes because they were made with a thicker material of tape than what your standard shop-bought VHSs were. You see, your shop-bought VHSs were essentially designed to be played maybe 10 times or something like that before you start getting the imperfections on the VHS tape with the dropout lines and all this rubbish. But your rental copies were made with a thicker tape that enabled you to watch more because they were designed to be rented and thus have a longer life. So I always preferred ex-rental videotapes, even if they had been rented and viewed a few times. You'd still get a better picture quality from them, or less imperfection, shall we say. So I remember getting that, and fantastic. Now, the film itself, like every, or no, not be fair, not every Tim Burton film, but the majority of Tim Burton films, they are style over substance. Yeah, Tim Burton is a great visual director. He's got this fantastic mind. He creates a fantastic looking world, and this film is no different in that respect. However, it falters in its story. There is no real story in this film. It's just events occurring. You know, Batman's there. Joker pops up. Joker's got a bit of history with Batman as a kid and is relevant to his past. Vicky Val's investigating the Batman. Joker has this plan. And Batman stops it. That's essentially a film. There's not much beyond that. Do you know what I mean? So there's no point in really talking about the story structure of this film. So when I did used to see the Batman, I was sort of caught up in the hype. You couldn't not be, sorry, because it was everywhere. It was posters, there was merchandise, it was all over the place. Now, I always liked the look of the film. I liked Michael Keaton, fantastic to this day, probably the best Batman. The suit was fantastic. The car was amazing. That's never been topped. That 1989 car. It was just a wonderful film. The Batwing was brilliant. The scene where the Batwing goes up in front of the moon and drops back down to create the bat in the symbol. Just fantastic world this film was set in. It made The Dark Knight dark, shall we say. It took that darkness and ran with it. However, part of me couldn't really get on with the film in that the story structure was so weak. So it's had a turbulent history, this film, for me. Now, I remember going and seeing, in 2005, seeing Batman Begins. Obviously, we'll come on to that later down the line. But I came out of that film and I was blown away. It's not having qualms about it. I was blown away by the film, and I was back on this little Batman kick. So I think the next day I went home and I thought, okay, I'm going to watch Batman '89. Put it in, started watching it. I had to turn it off. I couldn't watch it. I was like, Christ! In comparison, this film is crap. This film looks really bad. It is boring. It's dull. Bear with me with this. Do you know what I mean? So I switched it off and I couldn't watch it. I recently revisited on 4K. Now, I know people have issue with the 4K and that there's a lot of blue to it or something like this. I didn't. I thought it was a lovely copy. I enjoyed it, but I hadn't seen it for a long, long time. And I regained a newfound love for this film. So like I said, it's a very turbulent, up and down type of time I've had with this movie. And you know, it's wonderfully shot. Yes, it is weak on narrative, it is weak on story, but now as an adult I know that going into it. I expect that, I accept that, and I take the film for what it is. And you know, Michael Keaton's turn as Bruce Wayne Batman is just fantastic. There's some wonderful little nuances in his performance with his Bruce Wayne, that sort of a thing. He's just the best Batman there ever could be. How people rallied against him when he got cast in the role is beyond me. But this sort of thing happens, and he just stepped up and he proved everyone wrong. What can I say? Jack Nicholson as the Joker. I mean, this geezer he made this Joker. He was Joker. He was fantastic in the role. A proper comic book style Joker, shall we say. And wonderful he was. Kim Basinger looked fantastic, and she was very good in the film, and it was supported by a lot of other actors who were fantastic in the role. Now, the soundtrack, the Danny Elfman soundtrack, the opening scene where you're going around the Bat logo, but you don't realise it until it pulls out, and that tune that went on to inspire Batman the Animated Series, fantastic tune, you know, a fantastic score to this film. Then on downside, you've got the Prince soundtrack. Now, I remember having the Prince soundtrack. I did have it on cassette, and yeah, it's not very good, is it? Come on now. There's a couple of songs that are okay. The song in the museum's pretty good, I think, if I recall rightly, when he puts the radio on and he starts spraying on all the art, this sort of thing. And the song at the end, when he's throwing all the money, and that was a pretty good song that I quite enjoyed. But for the most part, it was an abysmal soundtrack, come on. As for the look of the film, like I said, the gothic setting, the gothic buildings, the darkness, the grit, the dirt. It feels like Gotham is a dirty, lived-in, crime-ridden world, and this was a film that started that sort of look of not knowing what era the film is set in that you've got some modern vehicles there and this sort of thing, but then at the same time you've got paparazzi dressed like they're in the 1920s with the big flash cameras, and this again went on to inspire the cartoon series. It feels like it's set in a world that isn't dated in any time period. It's a mix of different types of film noir and modern day mixture of a city, of a world, and this makes the film feel kind of timeless in that it doesn't become dated in it, because it's using different era stuff to convey this world, and that in itself is fantastic. You know, brilliant idea. You know, the film does drop the ball on some special effects. The film is, you know, you can see it's not an overly slick production. You know, there's some scenes that are pretty poor. That the Joker dropping at the end isn't particularly well done. You know, and there's another few bits here and there which are a bit, you know, but on the most part, you know, this is a fabulous film. I do now love the film. I think it's a fantastic film that opened the door for Batman on the big screen, and yeah, I've got a lot of love for this film now. It brings back a lot of fantastic memories, and there's not much more I can really say about it. You know, I have been a little bit critical here and there about it. I have, you know, like I said, it doesn't stand up in some of the effects department. It lacks any strong narrative. But as I said, Tim Burton films do. He's all style over substance. I've said that. But yeah, just, you know, fantastic era of me growing up. Yeah, but even then, you know, back then I was very critical of the film. I remember I didn't catch on to it like everyone else did, even though I was a comic reader and I loved Batman. Yeah, but other than that, you know, it's a fantastic film that has had a rocky path for me. That's all I can say. So anyway, so I'm going to leave it there. That was a little chat about Batman. Make sure you come to the next episode, because I will move on to the next Batman film. But after I've done the films, I will look at some other stuff differently related to Batman, other areas. I've got some books from the films. We'll take a look and that sort of thing. And if you enjoy Batman, then please consider hitting the subscribe button if you want to join me on this journey. Leave me a comment down below, your thoughts on this film, you know, your history with it, maybe. When did you first see it? Did you see it? Were you lucky enough to see it in the cinema? I don't know why I didn't go and see it. Like I said, I was young. Parents couldn't take me to everything, obviously. I couldn't go to everything. It was just one of those things. But anyway, so this is AJ. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sticking with me and listening to me rambling and my story of the past. Reminiscing, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care all, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.